I used to believe betrayal came from strangers, from people who didn't know your heart, your sacrifices, or the names you whispered into the dark when everything else failed. I was wrong. It came from my parents. The cello had always been my daughter Lily's voice. Before she could spell her name properly, she could already pull emotion from those strings: sadness, hope, anger, joy, all vibrating through polished wood and horsehair. When her fingers moved across the fingerboard, the world leaned in to listen. That cello wasn't just an instrument, it was her future. It had belonged to my grandfather, a man my parents rarely spoke about anymore. He had been a concert cellist once, famous enough to matter, poor enough to be forgotten. Before he died, he left the cello to Lily, not me. I remember my mother's tight smile when she heard that. My father nodded, said nothing, and changed the subject. I should have paid attention then. The cello was worth a fortune, around $80,000, according to the appraisal we'd done for insurance. I didn't tell my parents the exact number. I didn't need to. They understood value. They always did. After my divorce, I moved back into my childhood home with Lily, temporarily, just until I could save enough for our own place. My parents insisted. Family supports family, my mother said, her hand warm on my shoulder. I believed her. Life settled into a tense routine. Lily practiced every afternoon in the living room, sunlight catching dust motes as the cello sang. Neighbors stopped by just to listen from the porch. My father pretended not to notice, but I saw how he watched, calculating, measuring. Then came the Tuesday everything broke. I came home early from work. Lily wasn't practicing. The house was quiet, too quiet. "Lily?" I called. She came running from her room, eyes red, cheeks wet. "Mama, it's gone." At first, I thought she meant misplaced. Then I saw the empty corner of the living room. The stand was there, the cloth was folded neatly, the cello case gone. My chest tightened. "Where's the cello?" She shook her head, sobbing harder. "Grandma said she moved it. Grandpa took it somewhere." I didn't even take off my shoes. My mother stood in the kitchen, stirring tea like it was an ordinary afternoon. My father sat at the table, reading the newspaper. "Where is Lily's cello?" I asked. My mother didn't look up. "We sold it." The words didn't land at first. They floated. Unreal. "You what?" My father folded the paper calmly. It was collecting dust, and frankly, it's irresponsible to let a child play with something worth that much. I felt dizzy. "That cello belongs to Lily. It's not yours." My mother finally turned, her eyes sharp. "We raised you. Everything you have is because of us." I screamed. I cried. I begged. Lily stood behind me, clutching my shirt, shaking. They didn't flinch. "We already sold it. $80,000, cash." That number punched the air from my lungs. "And we needed the money," my mother added softly. "You'll understand one day." That was the moment I realized something terrifying. They hadn't just stolen an instrument, they had stolen my daughter's future, and they had no intention of giving it back. That night, I found a receipt hidden in my father's desk, along with a buyer's name that made my blood run cold. Because he wasn't just any collector. He was someone my parents never should have trusted.
I didn't sleep that night. Lily cried herself to exhaustion, clutching the empty cello case like it might magically fill itself again. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to my parents' footsteps move calmly through the house, unbothered, unashamed. At dawn, I slipped into my father's study. I knew his habits. Every receipt, every document, every secret, neatly filed, labeled in his precise handwriting. Control was his comfort. Evidence was his weakness. It didn't take long. The receipt was tucked inside an old insurance folder. Cash sale, $80,000, buyer's name typed cleanly at the bottom. Victor Harlan. My stomach dropped. Victor Harlan wasn't just a collector, he was a private investor known in classical music circles for one thing: acquiring rare instruments and locking them away. Not for performance, not for preservation, for leverage. He lent instruments to elite orchestras, pulled them back mid-season to force contracts, ruined careers quietly and legally. Musicians feared him, dealers avoided him, anyone with a conscience hated him, and my parents had handed him Lily's cello. I copied the receipt with my phone and slipped it back exactly where it was. When I returned to the kitchen, my mother was already awake, dressed nicely, humming while slicing fruit. "You look tired," she said sweetly. "You sold Lily's cello to Victor Harlan," I snapped. Her knife paused for just a second. "So you found it," she said calmly. "Yes, he made a very generous offer." "You sold it to a man who destroys musicians. That cello will never be played again." My father entered, adjusting his watch. "That's not our problem." "It was my grandfather's," I said. "You hated him for leaving it to Lily." My mother's face hardened. "Your grandfather chose favorites. He always did." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about money. It was revenge. My parents had never forgiven my grandfather for cutting them out of his legacy. The cello wasn't just valuable, it was symbolic, proof that someone had trusted Lily more than them. So they took it. I tried reasoning, then pleading, then threatening legal action. My father laughed. Prove ownership. The instrument was insured in my name, but the house was theirs. They'd reported it as abandoned property during my work hours, a technical loophole, a betrayal wrapped in legality. By noon, they were already planning renovations with the money, new floors, a European cruise, while Lily sat silent in her room, staring at her fingers like they had betrayed her too. That afternoon, I called Victor Harlan. His assistant answered first, polite, cold, efficient. "He's not available," she said after I explained, "and the cello is no longer negotiable." "I'll pay more," I said desperately. "I'll match whatever he wants." A pause, then a soft laugh. "He doesn't resell instruments, ma'am. He owns them." When Lily heard that, she finally broke. "I can't feel the music anymore," she whispered to me later that night. "It's like it left me." Something in me snapped. I stopped crying, stopped begging, because that night, while scrolling through old photos of my grandfather, I noticed something I had ignored my entire life: a small engraving near the end pin in one photo, a symbol, a mark. And suddenly, I remembered a story my grandfather once told me about what happens when the wrong person tries to claim what isn't truly theirs. The next morning, I made a call that would terrify Victor Harlan, and when my parents found out who I'd contacted, my mother went completely silent for the first time in her life.
My grandfather used to say that real instruments had memories. Not in a poetic way, he meant it literally. When I was a child, I once asked him why he never let anyone else open the cello without him present. He'd smiled, tapped the wood gently, and said, "Some things are safer when people don't know they exist." I didn't understand then. I understood now. The symbol I'd seen in the photo wasn't decorative. It was a luthier's mark, one used only by a small, almost mythical group of instrument makers in post-war Europe. They weren't famous for their sound. They were famous for secrecy. I called the only person my grandfather ever trusted besides me, Elena Voss, his former student and now a respected conservatory director. She answered on the second ring. "I think my parents sold Lily's cello," I said, "to Victor Harlan." Silence. Then she exhaled sharply. "Oh no, that cello? You know something," I said. "Yes," she replied, "and if Harlan has it, this could get complicated." Alina explained what my grandfather never wrote down. During the war, several master luthiers had hidden assets inside instruments, documents, gemstones, even bearer bonds to protect them from seizure. Most were recovered, some were lost. One cello, however, was never officially cataloged, my grandfather's cello. It was rumored to contain something valuable, Elena said, but no one ever proved it. Your grandfather refused to let anyone open it, ever. My hands trembled. My parents sold it for $80,000. Elena laughed bitterly. Then Harlan thinks he just bought a cello. He's about to learn otherwise. Because Victor Harlan didn't just hoard instruments, he dismantled them for authentication. If he opened that cello without understanding what he was dealing with, he could destroy something irreplaceable, or worse, expose himself to legal nightmares spanning decades. That afternoon, Elena contacted an international heritage lawyer on my behalf. I didn't even know such a job existed until that day. By evening, I had copies of old letters from my grandfather, letters my parents had never seen. They proved intent, they proved inheritance, they proved Lily's ownership beyond doubt, and they proved something else. The cello wasn't just an heirloom, it was protected property. I confronted my parents at dinner. I spoke to Elena Voss, I said casually. My father's fork froze midair. And a heritage lawyer, I added. Apparently, selling that cello may count as trafficking protected cultural property. My mother's face drained of color. That's ridiculous, I asked. Is it? Because Victor Harlan is already under quiet investigation. One wrong acquisition could ruin him. My father stood abruptly. You're bluffing. Am I? I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a draft legal notice. Formal, sealed, terrifying. My mother's hands began to shake. We already spent some of the money, she whispered. That was when I realized something chilling. They hadn't just betrayed Lily, they had trapped themselves. That night, Lily asked me something that broke my heart. Even if we get it back, will it still love me? I held her and promised something I wasn't sure I could keep. I won't let anyone hurt your music again. But Victor Harlan was about to make a move, and when he did, he would force my parents to choose between their freedom and admitting what they had really done. The next morning, a black car pulled into our driveway, and when my parents saw who stepped out, my father whispered a name he hadn't said in 30 years. The black car didn't belong in our quiet neighborhood. It sat low and glossy at the curb, engine still running, like it hadn't decided whether to stay or flee. When the driver stepped out, my mother dropped the mug she was holding. It shattered across the kitchen floor. The man who followed wasn't Victor Harlan. He was older, taller. His posture was rigid in the way of someone who had spent a lifetime making other people uncomfortable. His silver hair was combed back precisely, and his eyes, sharp and cold, locked onto my father the moment he opened the door. My father went pale. "Anton," he whispered. I had never heard fear in his voice before. Anton Weiss introduced himself as a private cultural compliance officer, a title that meant nothing to most people and everything to those who knew. He worked for international foundations that recovered protected artifacts quietly, without scandal. "I'm here about a cello," Anton said calmly, "currently in the possession of Mr. Victor Harlan." My mother tried to smile. There must be a mistake. Anton didn't even glance at her. He stepped inside, removed his gloves slowly, and placed a folder on the dining table. Inside were photos of the cello, recent ones. The wood had already been opened. Lily gasped. "They cut it," she whispered. Anton nodded. "Yes, unfortunately." My fists clenched. "Is it destroyed?" "No," he said, "but something was removed from inside, something that was never meant to be sold." My father slumped into a chair. "We didn't know." Anton finally looked at him. "You knew enough to sell it." The truth spilled out piece by piece. Years ago, my parents suspected my grandfather was hiding something valuable inside the cello. They searched his house after his funeral but never found proof. When he left the instrument to Lily, their resentment turned into obsession. When I moved back home, they saw their chance. "We just wanted what we were owed," my mother sobbed. "He ruined us." Anton closed the folder. "And now you've implicated yourselves in a federal cultural crime." Silence swallowed the room. "What happens now?" I asked. Anton turned to me. "That depends. Mr. Harlan has misplaced what he found. Until it's recovered, responsibility traces back to the sellers." My mother collapsed into tears. My father looked at me, eyes hollow. "Fix this." The entitlement stunned me. That night, Victor Harlan called. "I understand you're causing trouble," he said smoothly. "You should stop. You cut open my daughter's cello. You stole something that isn't yours." He chuckled. "Your parents sold it to me legally. Did they sell you what was inside?" Silence. That was the crack. "I want my daughter's cello back, fully restored, and I want what you removed returned to the authorities." "And if I refuse?" he asked. "Then Anton Weiss doesn't handle this quietly anymore." The line went dead. My parents didn't sleep. Neither did I. By morning, my mother packed a suitcase. "We'll leave. Just make this go away." I looked at Lily, who stood clutching her bow like a lifeline. "No," I said softly, "you don't get to run." Because this wasn't just about a cello. It was about accountability. And Victor Harlan was about to realize he had underestimated a little girl who loved music and a mother who refused to let it be stolen again. 2 days later, Victor Harlan agreed to meet, but when he opened the case in front of us, the cello was missing something that made Lily scream. The meeting took place in a private restoration studio on the edge of the city, sterile, white, and cold, like a hospital for wounded art. Victor Harlan stood beside a long table, hands clasped behind his back, perfectly composed. The cello case lay open in front of him. I knew something was wrong the second Lily stopped walking. She stared at the instrument like it was a stranger. The cello was there, polished, repaired, almost beautiful. Almost. "Where is it?" Lily whispered. Victor frowned. "Where is what?" "The soul," she said. "It's gone." I felt it too. The wood looked wrong, lighter somehow, emptier. The faint engraving near the end pin had been sanded down. "You altered it," I said. Victor sighed, as if tired of our emotions. I removed an internal compartment, necessary for evaluation. "You gutted it," I snapped. Anton Weiss stood silently near the door, arms crossed. Lily stepped forward, trembling. "May I play it?" Victor hesitated, then nodded. She lifted the bow. Her posture was perfect, muscle memory guiding her even through grief. The first note rang out, and cracked. The sound was thin, hollow, lifeless. Lily stopped mid-note. Her bow slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. "I can't hear it. It doesn't talk back." That was when Victor finally looked uncomfortable. Anton spoke. "Certain instruments rely on balance. Removing hidden structures can permanently alter resonance." Victor's jaw tightened. "The contents were valuable. So was the instrument," I said. My parents arrived late, breathless, guilt written across their faces. My mother broke down the moment she saw Lily. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I didn't know it would hurt her like this." Lily turned away. That hurt more than any scream. Anton handed Victor a document. "You will return the removed contents immediately. Failure to do so escalates this matter internationally." Victor scoffed. "You think I'd keep them here?" Anton smiled thinly. "We already traced them." Victor's confidence cracked. By evening, the truth emerged. Inside the cello had been a sealed packet of rare historical bonds, long dormant, now activated by restoration scans. Victor had rushed to monetize them, too quickly, illegally. The authorities arrived quietly. No sirens, no drama, just consequences. Victor was escorted out without protest, but justice didn't heal Lily. That night, she placed the cello back in its stand. "I don't want to play anymore," she said flatly. My heart shattered. My parents tried to apologize again. I didn't stop them. I didn't forgive them either. "You didn't just steal an object. You stole trust. You stole her joy." They nodded, broken. Anton approached me before leaving. "The cello can be restored, but it will take time and patience." Lily overheard. "Will it remember me?" she asked. Anton knelt. "If anyone can remind it, it's you." That was the first time she smiled in days. But something else was coming, because when the funds recovered from Victor's scheme were calculated, the number shocked everyone, and my parents realized far too late that selling the cello hadn't just destroyed a bond, it had cost them everything. When the final settlement papers arrived, my parents begged me not to open them in front of Lily, but what was written inside would change our family forever. The envelope arrived on a rainy Thursday, thick and heavy, like it already knew it carried bad news. My parents were waiting at the kitchen table when I brought it in. They hadn't asked me to sit with them like this since I was a teenager in trouble. My mother kept wringing her hands. My father stared at the wood grain, unable to meet my eyes. "Please," my mother said, "don't read it in front of Lily." I looked down the hallway where Lily sat quietly, polishing her bow even though she hadn't played in weeks. "She deserves the truth," I said. I opened the envelope. The settlement was precise, brutal, unforgiving, because Victor Harlan's illegal sale of the bonds had triggered an international clawback, and since my parents had been the original sellers of the instrument, they were financially liable for a portion of the damages. The number made my mother gasp. They would lose the house, the renovations they'd planned, the cruise, their savings, all gone. And there was more. Due to the fraudulent declaration of ownership, their names would be flagged in property and inheritance disputes going forward. No quiet transfers, no clever loopholes, no pretending this never happened. My father finally spoke. "We only wanted what your grandfather denied us. And in doing so," I said calmly, "you denied Lily her childhood." Silence. Lily stepped into the doorway. "I heard," she said. My parents turned, faces crumpling. My mother reached out. "Sweetheart." Lily shook her head. "You didn't steal my cello. You stole how safe I felt with you." That was the moment they truly broke, not because of money, but because a child had seen them clearly and rejected them. Weeks passed. Anton Weiss arranged the cello's restoration with one of the few luthiers capable of repairing its balance. Lily watched sometimes, silent, observant, healing slowly. My parents packed their belongings quietly. No arguments, no accusations, just the weight of consequences pressing every movement. Before they left, my father handed me an old envelope. "Your grandfather gave me this once," he said. I never opened it. Inside was a single note in my grandfather's handwriting. "If you ever choose greed over love, you will lose both." I folded it carefully. The day my parents drove away, Lily finally picked up the cello again. Just one note. It wavered, but it existed. She smiled through tears. "It's starting to remember me." I hugged her tightly, breathing her in, promising myself I would never let history repeat itself. But the story wasn't finished yet, because a month later, a letter arrived addressed directly to Lily, and when I saw who it was from, my hands began to shake. The letter wasn't from Victor Harlan, it was from someone claiming to know my grandfather better than any of us, and what it said about the cello changed everything Lily thought she'd lost. The letter was addressed in careful, slanted handwriting to Lily Hartman. Not to me, not to the family, just Lily.
I waited until she was home from school before opening it. We sat together on her bed, the restored cello resting in its stand nearby, like it was listening. Inside was a single page and an old photograph. The writer was Matteo Kessler, a retired master luthier living quietly in Italy. The photograph showed him standing beside my grandfather, both younger, both smiling, hands resting on the very cello that had torn our family apart. Matteo wrote that he had been contacted during the investigation into Victor Harlan. When the cello's unique construction surfaced, he knew exactly which instrument it was. "Your grandfather didn't hide wealth," the letter said. "He hid a promise." Matteo explained that the internal compartment was never meant to hold bonds forever. It had been a test, a safeguard. My grandfather believed that instruments, like families, revealed truth under pressure. If the cello was ever opened for greed, the balance would be disturbed. If it was protected for love, it would endure. And then came the line that made Lily's breath catch. "Your grandfather asked me to write to the child who would one day earn the cello back, not by law, but by heart." Matteo invited Lily to study with him one summer, free of charge, to learn not just how to play, but how to listen. Lily looked up at me, eyes shining. "Mama, he believed in me." I nodded, unable to speak. The following weeks were quiet, but different, lighter. The cello's sound slowly returned, not exactly the same, but deeper, wiser, like it had survived something and come back with a story of its own. Lily practiced again, not obsessively, gently, respectfully. One afternoon she stopped mid-scale and said, "I think it forgave them." "Who?" I asked. "The cello," she replied, "but I don't think I have to." And she was right. My parents tried to call. I let them leave messages. Damage doesn't erase apologies. Sometimes distance is the only honest consequence. On the day Lily played her first full piece again, I sat alone in the back of the small recital hall. The lights dimmed, the room hushed. She stepped onto the stage, steady, calm, brave. The first note bloomed warm and full. I cried silently. Not because of what was taken, but because of what survived. After the applause, Lily ran into my arms. "It talks again," she laughed. "It really talks." Later that night, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, "Do you think Grandpa knows?" I smiled. I think he always did. The cello hadn't just exposed betrayal, it had protected the truth, and in trying to steal my daughter's future, my parents had lost their place in it. But Lily? She gained something far more valuable than $80,000. She gained her voice, and this time, no one could take it away.